20 feet off the ground, and suddenly they were hit.
As many as 4 RPGs hit the helicopter. One of those RPGs hit at the rear at the point of the rotor blades, and it caused the helicopter to literally fall out of the sky.
I was looking out the back, and then it was just like if you were to stand there and me run up behind you and just hit you with the shoulder as hard as I could. To me, it all just blended together as the aircraft just started rocking and then hit the ground. It was all one big jolt. You're tied in, you got a snap link in, and trying to undo that and get out of the helicopter. It was a lot of commotion in there.
Gabe Brown describes it as confetti inside the fuselage because the bullets are just penetrating the thin skin of the helicopter, and the padding that lines that helicopter is just floating all around.
The first 30 seconds to a minute, it's all reflex. You're not thinking about what you're doing, you're just doing what you have to do.
This thing becomes a 52-foot bullet magnet. They're fighting over each other, trying to get out so they can form a defense and throw something back the enemy's way.
Inside the helicopter, each second lasts an eternity, as fate now becomes the hunter.
I remember looking over my shoulder and seeing the sparks from the rounds hitting the equipment in the helicopter. I just looked back down, unsnapped myself, and got off the helicopter. I wasn't going to stick around and see what else was going on.
One of the door gunners, a crewman for the helicopter, Army soldier by the name of Svitak, lays out a blast from his gun to provide cover for the troops, and all of the enemy shooting with machine guns and an RPG hits right near his position. He's killed instantly.
The second man, Ranger Specialist Mark Anderson, is hit at the same moment, and now 2 men are dead within 15 seconds. When the left side door gunner is wounded, the helicopter is defenseless. Suddenly, another RPG smashes into an oxygen canister and a fire breaks out. Razor 1 is facing annihilation.
All of a sudden, every enemy within earshot has seen this helicopter go down. They're launching every force they have at it, and these guys are trapped inside.
People were getting shot. It was crazy.
They were up against some hardcore Al-Qaeda. And the first thought, the first time it happens to you, is you can't believe that somebody's trying to kill you. I mean, that's just a natural human response.
As enemy bullets continue to rain down on the men trapped inside the burning wreck, the flight crewman, Corey Miller, manages to get the fire extinguished. Outside the helicopter, the Rangers struggle to get their bearings against a well-entrenched enemy.
Everything just happens. Okay, bam, we're on the ground. You move, you don't think about it, you just move. I jumped off the back of the helicopter, landed in that snow, and that's right about that point when the first thought process started. Okay, where is the enemy?
It's hard to exaggerate the amount of gunfire they were taking from at least 2 or possibly more positions. Bullets were flying every which way.
Gabe Brown told me that as they're going down the ramp, he notices Rangers on the right and on the left who have been cut down as they're debarking the aircraft. He said, I don't know if they're dead at this point. I don't know what I'm supposed to do for them. And in a split second, he realized what he is supposed to do is go and establish communications and get help on the way. So he runs out, and that's where they form up outside the helicopter to determine, as he described it, what in the hell is going on here.
21-year-old PFC Matthew Collins and Sergeant Bradley Croce, 22, are killed while exiting the helicopter. Less than 5 minutes after crashing, 4 men are now dead, and 1 is seriously wounded.
You don't have time to think about it. I went by and, I looked at him, and at that point, it wasn't real, you know. I looked, okay, he's not with us anymore, and keep moving.
Moments after the aircraft crashes and all of the troops that are able to debark, they set up an immediate rally point just behind the helicopter.
There were at least 2 enemy gun emplacements, one at the 8 o'clock position for the helicopter, which was taken out first by one of the Rangers, and then one at about the 2 o'clock position, about 50 yards off the nose of the helicopter, behind a big boulder and under a tree.
They were fighting at a slight angle up. They were fighting not only the enemy, but the weather and the terrain.
Once everybody gets in place, okay, we know what's going on. Then it's Cap himself saying, okay, I want you here, I want you there, do this, do that.
Cap himself is directing his men to move to a new position when he is hit.
When we were getting up, an RPG came in. The RPG exploded next to the helicopter, and Cap himself got some shrapnel in the leg. Lancaster got some in the leg, and I caught some in the shoulder. I couldn't see anybody, but Sergeant DePauli, he could see the guy that shot the RPG. He shot him.
22601 over.
What's up with that medevac?
I can't get him yet, but I'm on it.
Okay, look, we got 2 dead guys inside. We got 2 dead guys on the ramp. Helos are all messed up. I got wounded all over the place. We need that medevac as soon as we can. Come back.
15 minutes after Razor 1 has gone down, nearly all the Rangers are hit. With 4 dead and 3 badly wounded, Razor 1 struggles to regroup and establish communication with air support.
We didn't know where we were. We took a round in the helicopter, we're on the ground. And at this point, it's like, are we in the right spot? Are we where we're supposed to be?
Staff Sergeant Gabe Brown took up a position about 20 yards behind the helicopter, working the radio to get in touch with some of the fighter jets that were overhead to try to bring some air power to bear on Al-Qaeda gun positions.
Gabe Brown, he's trying to get anybody on the net, in the air, any platform that he can get to say that he's got a problem. But he has a bigger problem than he realizes because none of the frequencies work.
In addition to Brown's inability to make contact, their follow-on helicopter, Razor 2, has no idea of the situation on the mountaintop, where now the Rangers on the ground have eliminated 2 enemy positions but remain pinned down.
It was up towards the front of the helicopter, up about the 2 o'clock position. That's where all the fire was coming from. Once the squad leader had shot that guy to the right, then we were basically only taking fire from one direction.
When a bullet slams into Sergeant Joshua Walker's helmet,
Who do those guys think they are?
a sense of anger and indignation motivate Walker and the others to move to some rocks adjacent to the helicopter.
What they do is they set up 2 positions behind a rock face that's roughly 25 meters from the helicopter. What it does is it creates a buffer zone, and it gives them some cover, some concealment from the enemy, where they can keep them at bay for the moment, knowing that there are more enemy converging on that location.
As I was moving up on line, Captain Self had just got there prior to me. I moved up, and he was right to my left. Everybody ended up pretty close because there was only a couple spots to get down behind.
I got bad guys.
Self decides his first move is to evacuate his wounded. As Self and Vance confer, enemy mortar fire begins zeroing in on their positions.
He wanted to put the LZ behind us and bring in a medevac bird to get the casualties out. What do you think about putting it down there in that little saddle? And about that time was when the mortar round hit right where he wanted it, and he looked at me, he's like, well...
All right, it's time for plan B. Where's our air cover at?
We got to take the top of the hill before we can do anything.
All right, ready? Let's go!
As the Rangers are solidifying their position and the pararescuemen have started to treat the wounded, the enemy about 300 meters away and behind a hill where they could not see them had established a mortar position, and they were basically walking the mortars in. And what ended up happening was the shrapnel patterns were getting dangerously close to the wounded.
It was like two different battles going on. They had their war they were fighting, trying to keep the guys alive and treating them while we were fighting them.
One well-placed mortar would have wiped out the entire group right there.
Jeez! Bullets are bombed! Up to the bullets! We're out of here! Get him inside and go to fracking us!
So Kerry Miller made the call, let's get him out of the way of that shrapnel into a little bit of cover, which is an indication of the ferocity of that battle, that he chose to put them in a helicopter that is receiving enemy fire because that was the safest place for them at that point.
Gabe Brown remains unable to establish radio communications, but with the enemy positioned so close, air support is not viable in any case. The Rangers are sitting ducks unless they knock out the Al-Qaeda position. Captain Self decides his best chance is to launch a frontal attack.
Their first idea was to try to assault this bunker that was 50 yards off